Lindsay Adams murdered her husband. She stabbed him to death while he was trying to leave the house with their son in his arms. If Lindsay could do it all over again, she'd still kill her husband. Sadly, Lindsay's husband, Dennis, wasn't her only victim. Lindsay also murdered her 5-year-old son, Amari. The little boy didn't suffer as badly as his father, but still he died. His father's shielding arm took most of the stabbing blows. Amari died instantly when his mother stabbed him in the neck by accident. She was aiming for his father's face, but she severed her child's jugular vein. Lindsay murdered people before, but she promised herself to never kill a child. She loved her son more than anything, and she attacked her husband when he told her that she'd never see her son again. Lindsay went berserk on her husband after he caused her to stab her little boy by accident. The mind of a serial killer can be irrational. Lindsay blamed her child's death on her husband. He shouldn't have been holding her child while she was stabbing him. It all started when Dennis found out that his wife was a serial killer. He tried to grab his son and make his escape from the house, but he was too late. He called the police, but his wife arrived at their home before the cops did. She'd come home from work early, and Dennis didn't expect his wife to be home so soon. He'd heard the news reports about the killer, but he didn't know that the killer would be his wife. Lindsay became enraged after she found out her husband had removed her SD card from her phone while she was sleeping. He saw all her picture files and documents. He saw the photos of her victims on the SD card. Lindsay hated her husband for hacking into her phone's external hard drive and finding out her dark secrets. How could he be so suspicious? Well, she couldn't believe that he played detective after he found a smidgen of blood on her red floral dress. Lindsay despised her husband's attention to detail, and she tried so hard to be a good wife, and this is how he repaid her? This is what Lindsay was thinking as she was stabbing her husband to death. She didn't want her husband to see the pictures on her phone. She didn't want him to see the mutilated naked bodies and the blood. Lindsay wanted to maintain her image of the perfect, blonde, and beautiful trophy wife of a star NFL player and corporate businessman. Her husband's bloodhound actions had ruined everything for her. She wouldn't be the co-owner of her husband's company. She couldn't launch her new perfume called Glamour. No more expensive jewelry and designer dresses. No more living in a luxurious 20-bedroom home. She always knew that her husband suspected her of being a killer, but it didn't stop him from having sex with her every other night. Lindsay loved her husband, or sort of. She loved his celebrity, which is the only reason she married him and had a baby with him. Having a baby with him would ensure her financial security if she divorced him. But after stabbing her husband with a kitchen knife, all of Lindsay's financial security had gone up in flames. She turned in her glamorous Versace dress for an orange prison jumpsuit. Handcuffs replaced her Gucci handbag. The life of a female prison inmate was not the life that Lindsay had dreamed of. She didn't want to leave her Mediterranean-style beach house to become a resident at the Miami-Dade County Women's Detention Center. Dreams fall apart like a slice of ice cream cake sitting in the scorching summer sun. And this is how Lindsay saw her dreams melting away. But the only thing Lindsay felt bad about was stabbing her son by mistake. She kept seeing her son's bright, unadulterated smile and the tiny star-shaped birthmark on his chin. After she stabbed her child in the neck, she saw the light dying in his little eyes. Lindsay snatched her dead son out of her husband's arms before running out of the house. She carried her child's body to her car. Tears burned her eyes, and she hovered over her little boy after laying his dead body across the back seat of her silver BMW. His body barely covered half of the back seat. Blood stained his miniature shorts and his green Power Rangers tank top. Lindsay had her child's blood all over her hands and dress. She kissed her child's stubby fingers while lingering over his face, with her shoulder-length hair touching his little forehead. Lindsay wanted to bring her child back to life. She kept touching the bloody wound on her child's pint-sized neck. Every time she caressed her baby's face, she'd accidentally smeared blood across his nose and lips and his trimmed, curly afro. Lindsay crawled into her car's back seat and she held her son's body against her chest for a few minutes. Since her home was near the beach, she could smell the seawater in the ocean breeze. Her car's rear door was still open, and the breeze washed over Lindsay's face and her little boy's face, which she held against her chin. Lindsay could hear the police sirens in the distance. She'd forgotten that her husband had called the police before she killed him. Lindsay's husband thought his towering, muscular 250-pound frame would save him from being killed by his wife. Unfortunately, his little fashion model wife proved that size was no match against the serrated steel blade of a kitchen knife. Did Lindsay feel guilty for murdering her husband? Not really. His pretty boy looks and his perfect white smile would annoy her. She knew her husband was a playboy. That's why she killed the 3 women her husband was having sex with. She tracked down all of his mistresses. Cheating on her with one woman was bad enough, but when she found out he was seeing 2 other women, she made him pay for his infidelity. She left blood on her dress so her husband could find it. She left her second phone at home, knowing that her husband would hack into her phone and see the pictures of the 3 dead women. She wanted him to know. Lindsay enjoyed finding out where each woman lived. She enjoyed pretending to be a delivery woman and surprising the women at their doorstep at night. It helped that all 3 of the women were single. One was a lawyer, and Lindsay hated lawyers. She killed each of the women the same way. They'd see her FedEx uniform and assume that she was a delivery woman who needed directions. Their helpfulness got them killed. Lindsay knew she'd have them in her trap when they'd open the front door. First, she'd stab them in the throat so they wouldn't scream. Then she'd stab their eyes out. Lindsay slaughtered 2 of the women in their living rooms. She had to chase the 3rd woman around her house, which irritated her because she'd expected the woman to drop to her knees after stabbing her in the throat. No, killing her child was the only regret Lindsay had. The young woman never budged when she heard squad cars surrounding her BMW. She attacked one policeman when he reached into the back seat of her car, attempting to remove her dead child from her arms. Lindsay bit the officer's hand. She cussed at the officer after biting him and slapping him across the face. The policeman had his hands full and he had to use his taser gun on Lindsay. 2 police officers had to drag her out of the car. They ripped her son out of her arms before throwing her on the hood of the car and slapping handcuffs on her wrists. Ironically, the hip-hop classic Fuck the Police was softly booming out of Lindsay's BMW. When she heard Ice Cube's iconic voice exiting out of her car, it made her more aggressive and ready to fight the policeman who was working his ass off trying to subdue her. Lindsay laid one last punch on the policeman. She nailed him in the stomach with her elbow, and after she did that, she blacked out from a hard blow to the back of her head. The last thing she saw was a policewoman carrying her little boy's body to an ambulance. Worse situations confronted Lindsay once she was in prison. She got into a fight in the prison cafeteria. "Ain't you the bitch who killed her husband and her baby?" A fellow inmate spat her words in Lindsay's face. The inmate knocked Lindsay's lunch tray out of her hand before shoving the woman to the floor, which was a huge mistake. Lindsay jumped up from the floor, tackling the woman. She drove her fist into the inmate's throat, crushing her larynx. After she crushed the woman's throat, she hurled her to the floor. Another female inmate attacked Lindsay from behind, grabbing her hair and throwing her into a wall. Lindsay shook off the blow and she punched that inmate in the face, fracturing her nose. More women then tried to gang up on Lindsay, but a prison guard broke up the brawl. The other women prisoners told the guards that Lindsay had started the fight. She'd badly injured 2 inmates, and one of them needed immediate surgery on her throat. The prison guards threw Lindsay into solitary confinement based on the false accusations. Lindsay found herself in a dark isolation chamber, which was far worse than her prison cell. The young woman only had her thoughts to keep her company, and now and then she'd break down in tears while sinking to the floor. The chamber had no window, it had no bed or a toilet. It was just a small, dark chamber with soundproof walls and a vault-like door made out of thick, reinforced steel. Being alone in the darkness drove Lindsay into a panic. She curled up on the floor, hugging her knees while sobbing. Lindsay kept thinking about her little boy. Mental images of his small, dead body would flash in her mind. Tortuous desire to hold her son in her arms would assault Lindsay, and she was alone with her past sins, or so she thought. Her gasping and sobbing became interrupted suddenly by a disembodied voice that echoed from across the room. It was a man's voice, and it had a familiar, sultry baritone pitch. When Lindsay heard this whispering voice, she knew it was her husband. Lindsay jumped up, with her back against the wall. Her eyes struggled to find the source of her husband's voice. The panic set in when Lindsay thought about how she'd stabbed her husband to death. She couldn't believe that she was hearing his voice. "Dennis?" Lindsay spoke out to her husband cautiously, with her eyes searching through the darkness. Her mind told her that what spoke to her was not Dennis. There were two possibilities. Lindsay considered losing her mind as the first possibility. The second possibility alerted Lindsay, telling her that the voice she heard could be the voice of a ghost. Now, Lindsay didn't believe in ghosts and the paranormal. She preferred to believe in the possibility that she may have lost her sanity. The disembodied voice said something else that uplifted every hair on the back of Lindsay's neck. "Why did you stab me?" The disembodied voice sounded warm at first, but then it became cold and aloof. There was no love in the voice anymore. The inflections in the voice gave it an inhuman intonation. What scared Lindsay was how robotic the voice had become within a matter of seconds. She could detect an underlying hostility in this voice. "Why did you stab me?" The disembodied voice became gravelly and dark after it repeated the question. "I'm sorry." Lindsay almost lost her voice, and she noticed something tall standing in the room's corner. The darkness seemed to outline the apparition. It looked like a man, but Lindsay wasn't sure. There was a sharp object in the apparition's hand, and Lindsay knew it was a knife from the shape of the object. She recognized the distinct muscular definition of the figure. She watched as the apparition lurched forward while dragging his left foot. "Why did you stab me?" The apparition's voice sounded distorted. Lindsay finally got a good look at the monster that was dragging its feet toward her in the darkness. It was the ghost of her husband. Even though the apparition looked like her husband, something was disturbing about his facial features. Blood oozed from his eyes where his wife had stabbed him. Lindsay had stabbed her husband multiple times in his neck, almost decapitating him, and this meant that the apparition had a contorted head that hung halfway off his neck, and he had one ear missing. This ghost displayed all the stab wounds that his wife had afflicted on him. Wrath resurrected Lindsay's husband, and he wanted revenge. "I didn't mean to kill you. I'm so sorry, baby," Lindsay screamed at the apparition. She let out a frantic cry while turning around and banging her fists on the isolation chamber's door. Lindsay knew that no one was going to save her. No one could hear her screams through the thick steel door. Still, she kept banging her fists on the door while listening as the apparition's sliding footsteps grew closer. "Why did you stab me?" The ghost kept repeating himself, and each time he'd ask, his voice would sound more demonic. Lindsay whirled around, throwing her back against the door. "You cheated on me. That's why I stabbed you. I found out you were seeing 3 different women, so I killed you." Lindsay then lashed out at the ghost. She swallowed hard while looking up at her dead husband who was towering over you. "I killed you and those 3 stupid bitches you were having sex with. All of you deserve to die." Lindsay's defiance shadowed her fear for a moment, and her fear quickly returned when she saw 3 other figures emerge from the darkness behind her dead husband. It didn't take Lindsay long to see that the 3 ghostly figures were women holding knives. What sent Lindsay over the edge was when she saw a little ghostly figure emerge from behind the 3 female apparitions. Lindsay saw her son's blood-stained Power Rangers tank top. She saw his small feet dragging toward her. "Why did you stab us?" All the apparitions shouted at Lindsay in unison. She collapsed to the floor, sobbing like a madwoman. The apparitions kept shouting at Lindsay through their lifeless, demonic voices, and she covered her face when her husband, the three women, and her little boy stood over her with sharp instruments in their hands. And this is how Lindsay met her end. She braced herself for impact, but something happened. "All right, cut," a movie director shouted. The room's lights came on to reveal a film crew and a movie set. "Thank you," Lindsay giggled when the camera crew applauded her performance. The apparitions, who were actors, helped Lindsay to her feet. Two of the actors were Lindsay's husband and her son. "You did good, Mommy." Lindsay's son, Amari, hopped into his mother's arms, receiving a kiss from her. "Do I look scary?" Amari whispered to his mother, causing her to giggle. "No, you don't look scary. You'll never look scary to me," Lindsay told her son before kissing the tip of his nose. Lindsay put her arm around her husband, and she laughed at his look of agony, which showed behind the movie makeup and prosthetics on his face. "God, I can't get this crap off my face," Dennis told his wife after kissing her on the lips. After he kissed his son on the forehead, he looked around at the film director and crew, who were still applauding and praising him and his wife's performance. Dennis wanted to enjoy this moment, but something wouldn't let him. At unexpected times, Dennis would see a ghost. His eyes locked onto a mysterious figure that was standing amongst the camera crew. The figure was a young woman, and she was clapping along with the crew members. Dennis's heart rate increased when he saw the bloody dent in the woman's head and her mangled arm. The woman had an exotic beauty, but her black eyes and grotesque injuries contaminated her beautiful features. Dennis knew he was looking at the ghost of a pedestrian who he'd accidentally killed a few months ago. She would always haunt him no matter where he went. She'd haunt his dreams and his reality. The apparition refused to let Dennis forget what he'd done. Dennis knew that his drunk driving would punish him. He got out of his car to help the woman, but he panicked after he'd seen what his car had done to her body. And Dennis left the woman on the road to die. "Babe, are you all right?" Lindsay asked when she saw her husband staring intensely at something she couldn't see. She saw a look of horror on her husband's face. "Dennis, what's the matter?" Lindsay gently tugged on her husband's arm. She gave him a confused smile when he broke out of his trance, turning to look at her. "Oh, I'm okay. I just got lost in thoughts." Dennis tried to explain his odd behavior. "Baby, I'm fine." A nervous laugh then escaped Dennis when his wife gave him a concerned look with a hint of suspicion in her eyes. Dennis looked away from his wife for a second. He turned his eyes back on where the deformed woman stood, but she had vanished. Lindsay put her arm back around her husband's waist. She giggled before whispering in his ear, "You had me nervous for a minute. There was a look of terror on that handsome face of yours. It was like you were seeing an actual ghost." Hey there. Thank you so much for taking the time to drop by and listen to this story today. It really means a lot to me. I put a lot of time and effort into making these videos, so it's nice to know that there's someone out there listening. Do me a little favor, would you? Click that like button, leave a comment, and if you really feel like it, why not subscribe too? Okay, happy tales everyone. See you soon.